Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive? This time we're tackling a giant Friedrich Nietzsche.
Ah, Nietzsche. His influence stretches far beyond just philosophy, art, literature, you name it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even revolutionaries and dancers have been inspired by him. But today we're going deep into the philosophy, especially for those of you who already know the basics.
Right, right. We're working with the Stanford Encyclopedia Philosophy's entry on Nietzsche's life and works.
A great starting point. Now, Nietzsche's life was pretty wild. He started composing music at a young age, had a dramatic collapse later on, and those unpublished notebooks, well, let's just say they've caused quite a stir.
And his family background, all those Lutheran ministers, it's almost ironic considering his later views.
It is, isn't it? Let's start there, with his early life. Imagine little Friedrich in a small German village, surrounded by all that piety.
Hard to picture the future critic of Christianity, right? But it's these early influences, the Lutheranism, his education at Schulforta.
Not to mention his early encounters with Schopenhauer and Wagner.
It all shaped his worldview. It's crucial to understand these influences to really grasp Nietzsche's philosophy.
Absolutely. And can you believe he was born on the same day as the Persian king?
Talk about coincidence. And don't forget that chest injury he got during his brief military service.
Oh yeah, that definitely left its mark. Okay, so fast forward a bit. 1869, Nietzsche becomes a professor at Basel. He's only 24.
Incredible, right? And just a year later, he publishes his first major work.
The Birth of Tragedy. Now, this isn't your typical academic book. He really challenges the traditional view of ancient Greece.
Forget noble simplicity. Nietzsche dives into the raw, primal forces at play. He introduces the Apollonian and Dionysian.
Ah, yes. The Apollonian representing order and reason, and the Dionysian.
The Dionysian being all about chaos, instinct, passion, and Nietzsche argued that Western culture had suppressed this Dionysian energy.
Leading to that artistic and spiritual stagnation. It makes sense why he was initially drawn to Wagner's music, seeing it as a resurgence of that Dionysian spirit.
A resurgence, exactly, though as we know that admiration wouldn't last forever. The relationship, much like Nietzsche's philosophy, was complex.
But we'll get to that later. Speaking of complex, the reception of The Birth of Tragedy was, well,
Let's just say it wasn't universally loved.
his former schoolmate, Wilhelmowitz Moellendorff, really tore into it.
The irony is, Nietzsche later used similar imagery in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, almost like a little philosophical payback.
It's fascinating how these things come full circle. And even before The Birth of Tragedy, Nietzsche was already questioning the nature of truth. His essay on truth and lies in a non-moral sense.
Ah, yes, that one really shakes things up. He basically argues that language and concepts are just metaphors, tools we use to impose order on a world that's inherently chaotic.
So truth is just a convenient fiction.
You could say that, and this sets the stage for his later, even more radical critiques of morality. The very foundations of good and evil will be put to the test. So we're moving into what's often called his middle period, right? And there's a real shift happening here.
Oh yeah, he's breaking away from those early influences like Wagner and Schopenhauer, really forging his own path.
Right. It's not just following in their footsteps anymore. He's pushing back, challenging their ideas, especially their pessimism.
And you can see it in his writing too, right? It's changing. It's less like those big scholarly works.
Yeah, he's getting more aphoristic. Think human, all too human, for example.
It's like he's trying to capture these bursts of insight, almost like lightning in a bottle.
Exactly. And it's during this time that he really starts developing the concept of the will to power. You see it emerge in Daybreak.
Ah, yes, the will to power, such a central theme in his later work, but it's often misunderstood, isn't it?
It is. It's not about brute force or domination like some people think.
Definitely not. It's not about conquering others or imposing your will on the world. It's much more nuanced.
Exactly. He sees it as this fundamental drive, this striving for growth, expansion, even self-overcoming.
So even acts that seemed altruistic could be seen as expressions of the will to power. It's a pretty radical idea.
It is, and it challenges how we traditionally think about morality. He sees morality itself as a way of shaping the world according to our values.
So for Nietzsche, even morality is a manifestation of the will to power. Wow.
And then, of course, there's the gay science, where he introduces some of his most famous and challenging concepts.
You're talking about the death of God and eternal recurrence, right?
Those are the ones, and they're really intertwined. First, the death of God. Now, he doesn't mean this literally.
Right. It's more about the decline of those traditional values, the loss of absolute truth,
It's like the foundation of Western morality is crumbling, and we have to grapple with what that means.
and then eternal recurrence. Wow, this idea of reliving every moment of your life over and over again, eternally.
It's a lot to take in.
Yeah, even for a philosopher.
And Nietzsche, he didn't see it just as a theory. It was almost like a psychological test. Could you embrace everything, knowing you'd live it all again exactly as it was?
It makes you think about the choices you make, the meaning we find in life.
Absolutely. And this idea of eternal recurrence, it becomes deeply connected to the Übermensch, the overman that's introduced in Thus Spoke Zarathustra.
Oh yes, Zarathustra. Such a departure from his earlier works. It's almost like a philosophical novel, isn't it? All those allegories and metaphors.
It is, and through Zarathustra, he introduces this idea of the Übermensch, this individual who has overcome the limitations of traditional morality.
But the Übermensch is often misunderstood, right? Some people think it's like a superhuman being, or that it's promoting some kind of elitism.
Exactly, but that's not what Nietzsche had in mind. It's more of an ideal, a symbol of human potential, this drive to overcome ourselves, to create new values.
And this self-overcoming, it's all tied to eternal recurrence, isn't it? The Übermensch is the one who can embrace eternal repetition, not just endure it, but find joy in it.
To reach a level of self-affirmation where you can say yes to life, even knowing you'd live it all again. It's amazing, right? How his ideas about the will to power and eternal recurrence all come together.
It is. But Nietzsche's story doesn't end there. His final years were actually some of his most productive.
Oh, absolutely. He was writing like a man possessed. And the works from this period, some of his most controversial, for sure.
His final year, 1888, was a whirlwind. He published The Case of Wagner, where he totally tears apart his former idol.
Yeah, it's a complete reversal from his earlier view of Wagner as this champion of the Dionysian spirit.
It's like he's saying, look, I've moved on, and you should too. Always questioning, always reevaluating.
And then there's Twilight of the Idols. He goes after Socrates, Plato, Kant, even Darwin.
It's like he's taking on the whole history of Western thought.
Exactly. And of course, there's the Antichrist, probably his most controversial work.
Yeah, his critique of Christianity really comes to a head there.
He sees it as the ultimate expression of what he calls slave morality, valuing humility and self-denial over strength and power.
Now, it's important to remember that Nietzsche wasn't promoting hatred or intolerance.
Right. He was urging us to really examine the roots of Christian morality, how it shaped our values, and, in his view, often held us back.
He wanted us to confront its darker side and reclaim that power and vitality he felt it had suppressed.
But even with all these critiques, he still makes time for self-reflection.
Oh, you're talking about Ecce Homo.
That's the one. It's a fascinating look into his own mind, his motivations, struggles, and insights.
It's so Nietzsche, bold, provocative. He even titles sections things like Why I Am So Wise and Why I Write Such Good Books.
He knew he was shaking things up.
But tragically, all this intellectual energy was cut short. In early 1889, he had a complete mental breakdown.
Collapsed right there on the streets of Turin.
And the cause? Still a mystery? Some say syphilis, others a brain tumor.
Whatever it was, it's a sad end to such a brilliant mind. He spent his last years in his family's care.
But his ideas lived on. They spread like wildfire, influencing thinkers throughout the 20th century and beyond.
Freud, Sartre, Camus, Foucault, the list goes on. And his work is still relevant today. It challenges us to think critically, to confront those uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world.
So as we wrap up our Nietzsche deep dive, what's the takeaway for our listeners?
Well, Nietzsche urges us to question everything, our values, our beliefs, everything we think we know. He pushes us to move beyond those easy answers, to embrace the complexity of life, and to strive for something more.
He reminds us that philosophy is not just about abstract theories. It's about grappling with those big questions, the ones that really matter, the questions that define what it means to be human.
And even if you don't agree with all his conclusions, his insights are invaluable. He forces us to think differently about morality, power, truth, the whole human condition.
And on that note, we want to thank you for joining us on this journey through the world of Friedrich Nietzsche.
Keep those minds working, folks. Keep questioning, keep exploring, keep diving deep.